No one would ever think that the old jacket caught on the fence in the quiet hours of the morning actually belonged to a person. But as Jacob Ritter rubbed his eyes and got closer, he saw a pair of wrists through the wind-blown hair. Bruised, tied up, and completely still. Jacob, who'd gone into seclusion after the war, had seen how cruel people could be more times than he could count. Still, finding a girl like this, dumped at the edge of his own land, it turned his world upside down. The ropes around the girl's hands were so tight the knots had cut into her skin. Instead of trying to untie them, he pulled out his knife and carefully cut her loose. Deep, purple marks were left on her arms as the ropes fell away, and the girl opened her eyes just a little. She jerked back in a panic, her voice rough. "Don't touch me." Jacob backed off. They just looked at each other. The girl's eyes were filled with the same kind of helplessness you see in a trapped animal. Her face was dirty, lips cracked, dress torn. But to Jacob, she was just a child. Someone had done what no adult should ever do, left her out here to die. "What's your name?" Jacob asked, softening his voice. "Lena." She whispered it, as if just saying her name was a crime. Then she added, "My father left me here." That sentence hit Jacob like ice down his spine, like a ghost from the past. For 20 years, he'd tried to hide behind his land, his loneliness, and his silence. But now this little girl was like a door back to Jacob's own past. His father had also left the dirty work behind like it was nothing. "Can you walk?" Lena nodded. She was clearly in pain, but she stood up with determination. They walked toward the cabin together. But Jacob's unease grew with every step, just like the little clouds of dust rising from the ground. On the horizon, he saw 3 riders approaching. Fast, determined, moving like shadows. Jacob stopped at the door, reaching for his rifle with one hand. "Were you expecting anyone?" he asked, not looking at Lena. Lena hesitated, her lips trembling. "Those are my father's men. They're coming back." Inside the cabin, the girl was out of breath. Her hands needed bandages, but her fear was even greater. Jacob grabbed an old bottle of water from a dusty cupboard and set it on the table. "Drink slowly," he said. Lena could barely hold the cup, her hands shaking so badly. The way she trembled was painfully familiar to Jacob. As a kid, running from his own father, he'd shivered just like this every night. "What do they want from you?" Jacob asked quietly. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "They gave me away for a debt. But then my father said I was useless. I wasn't worth anything to them. So, they just left me here." Something flared in Jacob's eyes. Only someone who'd been used by their own parent could really understand. He took a deep breath, reached for his old rifle, and looked out at the dust clouds getting closer. Those men were coming back. And this time, it wasn't just about the dead, it was about covering up their past. "All right," Jacob said. "If they're coming, this time, someone will be waiting for them." Lena jumped. "It's not just my dad. He's got men with him. They're dangerous. They won't think twice about shooting." "Neither will I," Jacob said. But deep down he knew. This wasn't just about protecting someone. It was about facing his own past. And Lena was his chance to rewrite his fate. But Lena didn't look away and added, "There's something else. I didn't tell you. The person my father really owes is my real father." Jacob's face went hard. Lena's eyes filled with tears. "That man wants to take me. He thinks he owns me now." They heard footsteps outside. The dust was even closer now. Jacob gripped his rifle tighter, while for the first time, Lena's eyes showed a strange mix of hope and fear. Another silence. But this silence, right in the middle of Jacob's years of loneliness, was the beginning of something new. And for the first time, the front door opened not into Jacob's darkness, but into the light. As the footsteps outside echoed on the dirt, Jacob leaned his rifle against the window. While he washed his hands at the sink, one question kept running through his mind. Am I really not going to run this time? Lena was quietly watching from the other side of the window. Her eyes were following the dust clouds far off in the distance, but her lips were silently repeating a few words. Maybe a prayer, maybe just trying to silence her past. Jacob pulled back the curtain and looked out. There were 3 men. 2 had their guns at their saddles, but the third was holding his. They all looked like they'd just stepped out from the shadows. Their steps didn't carry fear, just habit. "What do these men want?" Jacob asked. Lena's voice was ice cold. "Me. But not just because of the debt. My real father isn't one of these men. He's someone above all of them. And he wants me back. Because now, I'm his inheritance." Jacob's heart skipped a beat. His inheritance. Yes, Lena said. But it's not about being a father. It's about ownership. Someone outside was approaching the door with slow, heavy steps, cutting off Jacob's thoughts. He stopped just a few inches from the door. Then a deep voice called out, "Ritter, we know you're in there. That girl belongs to us. Give her up now and there won't be any bloodshed." Jacob took a deep breath. "Are you planning to leave?" he asked Lena. Lena shook her head. "They sold me once. This time, I'm going to fight." Jacob smiled. Not a happy smile, but one that was tired and determined. Just like when he'd planned his first escape years ago. "All right," he said. "Then this house is our fortress now." The door boomed again. This time, it sounded like they'd hit it with a battering ram. Then the second man spoke. "1 hour. We'll be back. And next time, we won't knock." As their footsteps faded, Jacob looked out the window again. But his eyes weren't on those men. They were watching another movement on the horizon. A second group was coming. Bigger, more organized, and leading them. There was no need to say who it was. Lena saw them too. Her face went pale. "He's coming." Jacob's fingers tightened around the rifle's grip. "Then the fight is going to start sooner than we thought." The group of riders slowly emerging from the dust clouds felt like a nightmare tightening around Jacob's chest. They all moved in the same formation, with the same determination. But the man in front stood out from the rest. His leather jacket almost shone. The weapons on his back weren't for show, they were a threat. And in his eyes, there was a power that could change a person's fate with just a look. "There," Lena said, her voice like stone. "That's my real father. His name is Victor." Jacob didn't take his eyes off the scene as he gripped his rifle tighter. "So why does he want you now?" Lena paused for a moment. "My mom left him years ago. She took me with her. But my mom died. And now he wants to take back everything he left behind. Says it's all about blood ties." Jacob frowned. Blood doesn't always mean family. Outside, the riders stopped. Victor didn't get off his horse, but his voice filled the whole house. "Jacob Ritter, you have something of mine in your house. And by keeping her, you're making yourself my enemy." Jacob stepped up to the window, raising his voice. "No one here belongs to anyone. If you mean your daughter, she can make her own choices now." Victor laughed a cold, chilling laugh. "The choices of a 16-year-old girl. Her choices mean nothing to me. But you can choose your own life. Give her to me. And walk away." Right then Lena jumped in, yelling out the window. "I'm not yours. You thought I was dead. But now you've come back because you want to own me, not love me." Suddenly, there was silence. Even the riders stood still. Victor's voice became calmer, more threatening. "The way you talk. Just like your mother. I didn't listen to her either. I won't listen to you." In that moment, Jacob made up his mind. "If you want to fight me, then come. But I swear, no girl is coming out of this house." And then, the first shot rang out. Glass shattered from the window, and Lena dropped to the floor. Jacob immediately threw himself over her, trying to protect her. She wasn't hurt, but a bullet had nearly grazed her head. Jacob grabbed his rifle and aimed at the window. One of the men outside went down. The rest quickly took cover. The house was now under siege. Lena was crying and whispering, "Leave me. Go save yourself." But Jacob shook his head. "No, I won't abandon anyone to their fate this time." Dust rose outside, and Victor shouted again, "I'm giving you 1 more hour. After that, I'll burn this house to the ground." But inside, Jacob and Lena had already made up their minds. They had 1 hour, and that would be more than enough time to settle things with the past. Inside the house, time seemed to slow down. Every tick-tock sounded less like the clock and more like the approach of danger. Jacob opened up an old chest. Inside, he found a worn map, a few bullets, and a dusty handgun. He turned to Lena. "Have you ever held a gun before?" he asked. Lena shook her head without blinking. "No, but I will if I have to." Jacob set the pistol on the table. "Looks like now you have to." Lena looked at the gun. For her, it wasn't just a tool for defense, it was a symbol of standing up to her past. With trembling hands, she picked it up. Jacob looked her in the eyes as he spoke. "You didn't start a war, but you'll have to finish one." Outside, Victor's men had taken their positions. This time, they were quiet, as if breathing in the calm before the coming storm. Victor still hadn't gotten off his horse. He stood up on the rise, as if waiting for his verdict to be delivered. Jacob peered through the curtain. At least 7 men. 2 looked like they're carrying explosives. They might be planning to blow the cabin. Lena's eyes widened. Would they really do that? Jacob answered without hesitation. What Victor feels isn't love. It's possession. You're not the hole in his conscience, you're his pride. And when his pride is wounded, he'll burn everything. After hearing that, Lena stood up. Now there was determination in her eyes. Her fear was gone. She turned to Jacob. I know the man who tied me to a fence. I know the one who sees me as inheritance. But now, I have to be someone who can protect herself. I don't belong to anyone. Right then, a flare shot up into the sky, and Victor's voice followed. Your time is up. If that girl doesn't come out, we're coming in. Jacob slung his rifle over his shoulder and gave Lena a look. Then we welcome our guests. They piled heavy furniture behind the old windows. Jacob wedged a table behind the door. He picked out a gap in the window for a firing position. And Lena hid in the back corner of the room, hands wrapped around the pistol. The first attack came from the back of the cabin. Jacob heard a dry branch snap as someone crept closer. He turned his rifle. One shot. Silence. Then an explosion. The window frame shattered. Jacob fell to the floor in a cloud of dust and smoke, but got up right away. He wasn't hurt. For the first time, Lena fired the gun. Her hand was shaking, but she didn't miss. The man coming up to the window dropped to the ground. The girl's eyes were wide, but not from fear. Not from shock. From control. I did it, she whispered. Jacob just nodded. You did what you had to do to survive. Now we keep going. But just then, something new happened outside. This wasn't an ordinary attack. Victor had added something else to the mix. Because now, Lena heard her mother's voice. Lena, sweetheart, I'm here. The girl, stunned, ran to the window. Jacob grabbed her. Wait, it could be a trick. But Lena's eyes filled with tears. Know that voice. It's my mom. I thought she was dead. Jacob moved closer to the window, looked out. And there, in the middle of the dust clouds, stood a woman in chains, covered in blood. And she really looked like Lena's mother. Lena lunged for the window, but Jacob grabbed her by the arm. Wait, he said, the voice might be real, but the intention isn't. The woman outside looked broken, but alive. Chains on her hands, 2 armed men by her side, and leading them. Victor. Surprise, he called out. I kept her alive for you. Tears welled up in Lena's eyes. If she's alive, why did they lie to me? Jacob stared out the window, mind dark with suspicion. Because they're playing you. They're using your feelings as a weapon. Victor stepped forward. Send out the girl. She'll leave with her mother. No one has to get hurt. But Jacob understood. This was a trap. They were trying to draw Lena out by using her mother. Even if that's really your mom, Jacob said, they don't want to save her. They want to break you. Lena lowered her head and wiped her tears. All right, she said. This time, I'll break their game. Then she did something no one expected. She grabbed her gun and slipped out quietly through the back window. By the time Jacob noticed, it was too late. A minute later, a single gunshot rang out from outside. Then shouting, Jacob ran to the door, pushed it open with his shoulder. And there, he saw Lena on her knees. Her mother was in her arms. The chains were off. The woman was unconscious but alive. But the look on Lena's face wasn't victory, but loss. They tried to use me, she said. But my mom, she winked at me. She broke their plan. Right then, Victor screamed. Enough. The girl and the woman, they're both mine. Everything was mine. And then, he raised his gun. Victor's eyes were wild. He pointed his gun at Lena. I spent years trying to find you. No one's taking you away from me now. But Lena didn't move. She was silent. She just looked at Jacob. Now, she whispered. Jacob nodded. Yes. At that moment, Lena swung the chains she'd dropped, throwing them at Victor's horse in one quick motion. The horse spooked and reared back. Victor lost his balance. As he fell, Jacob fired, aiming for Victor's hand. The gun dropped to the ground. But Victor didn't go down. He dropped to his knees, pulled a second gun from his vest, and aimed it at Lena. And just then, Lena's mother, covered in blood, barely able to stand, rose to her feet. Enough, Victor. That girl may be your blood, but she's not your soul. Victor turned, pulled the trigger. But the gun didn't fire. Lena's hands were on her own gun. And this time, they didn't shake. The first shot hit Victor in the shoulder. The second, right in the heart. Everything stopped. His men ran. The woman collapsed to her knees. Jacob ran to Lena. But Lena's eyes were full of tears. She didn't drop the gun as she whispered, Is it over? Jacob didn't answer. He just bent down, took the gun from her hands, and set it on the ground. "No one gets to decide who you are anymore," he said. That night, no one spoke. Victor's body was buried in silence. Jacob felt no victory, just quiet, and the relief that someone was still alive beside them. But when morning came, Lena found Jacob. "We have to do something," she said. "I need a new name, a new life." Jacob looked at her, confused. Lena handed him an envelope. She had taken it from inside Victor's coat. Inside, there was just a note. "This girl is not mine. I took her." Underneath was a name, Crawford. Jacob's face went pale. He could never forget that name, because that was the man Jacob had been sold to when he was 15. Lena looked up at him. "I guess your past and mine started in the same place." Another silence. But this time, the bond between them was born from that silence. And as they set out for distant places, there was no blood tie between them. But now, there were two people carrying each other's past and building a future together. This wasn't a family. This was a new reality built on freedom.